When the old-ass retro gamer recently did a top 3 Tuesday for Metroid games, I simply couldn't resist making my own response video. Being a fan since 1987, the Metroid franchise is one of my all-time favorites. But which 3 do I consider the best? Which ones have had the most impact on me and my gaming career? This should be fun. I still remember the day I had purchased Metroid Zero Mission. It was Friday and it was payday, and what was a bi-weekly ritual back then, I hit up the local video game store in the same parking lot as my bank during lunch hour after cashing my paycheck. It was February 2004, and Damageplan had also recently released a new CD. Man, what a killer weekend to look forward to. New game, new music, what could possibly ruin it? How about a romantic getaway to Grand Lake for Valentine's Day weekend? Yeah, Nintendo released Zero Mission right before Valentine's Day, and while probably not a big deal for most of their fans, this definitely put a cramp in my style. My girlfriend at the time, who hated that I was into nerdy shit to begin with, set up an entire weekend in the snowy mountains, and all I wanted to do was play my damn game. Well, that's exactly what I did in bed while my ex slept in our cabin room, and after having ended up only catching about 3 hours of Z's myself in favor of traversing planet Zebes, my girlfriend wasn't too happy with a yawning and cranky ass Wes the next day. It was totally worth it. I could have easily played Zero Mission all night and foregone sleep altogether. I couldn't put it down. I had to force myself to stop. Now, being a huge fan of the original Metroid on NES, I couldn't wait to dive into a remake as I felt the original definitely needed a facelift. The world map is mainly the same with obvious additions and obstacles to overcome. Borrowing elements from what made both Super Metroid and Fusion so great, Zero Mission brilliantly mixes it all together while retelling the story of Samus's first encounter with the Metroids. The visual upgrade from its 8-bit original is night and day. Zero Mission looks amazing. The cutscenes are out of this freaking world, and the revamped soundtrack is as equally improved, pumping new life into what was an already atmospheric and brooding score. Items and enemy locations for the most part are unchanged, but the paths to reach them is a different story. While point A to point B may look easy to access on the map, it's never that simple. Now there are puzzles and obstacles to circumvent. I love how Nintendo took so many liberties with the original, in turn improving upon the archetype it had already created. New bosses were added, more items, and a twist at the end which I can just about guarantee no one saw coming. My only gripe would be that it's too short. I want more. More! If you've never played either the original or this one, I say skip the NES version and just go with Zero Mission. It's the definitive one by a mile. As I've already mentioned, I was a big fan of the original Metroid, so when Super Metroid was released in 1994, you know I was all over that shit. I tell the story of my first experience with Super Metroid in my 5 most nostalgic games video, so I won't bother repeating it here, but to say that this game blew me away is an understatement. All I could do was think about Super Metroid when I wasn't playing it. My coworkers at a dry cleaners that I worked with at the time constantly made fun of me since it was all I could ever talk about at work, and would always get giddy near closing time, knowing I was only a few hours away before losing myself again in the world of Zebes. What made the sequel so great was that it took what its predecessor attempted to do within its 8-bit limitations and brought them to vivid 16-bit life. The isolated environment that the original tried to emulate is coupled with desolate ambience here. The hypnotic drone of computers and archaic technology paint a bleak picture shrouded in solitary. The rain pattering in the background. Impressive. The world that the original had tried to produce, the very same that I had tried to replicate in my head, was finally alive and playable on my TV screen. The visuals are astounding, with each of the planet's environments boasting of their own unique settings. The music, as previously noted, is the perfect soundtrack to accompany Planet Zebes, and the landscapes throughout just wouldn't be the same without Super Metroid's ingenious score to complement them. The graphics and sound really go hand in hand here, and the enemies are plentiful, full of color and detail, and enormous bosses? Damn straight. Super Metroid also introduced a bunch of new toys for Samus to play with, such as the Speed Boost and Power Bombs. Hidden items are littered everywhere, and using these new weapons to uncover them, coupled with a much needed map, makes Easter egg hunting that much more fun, something that the original sorely lacked. But despite Super Metroid's myriad of improvements, the game still takes many nods to the original, which back in '94 I thought was the shit. Hell, I still think it's pretty cool. It's hard for me to even imagine playing Super Metroid without having first gone through the original. It's practically a love letter to its predecessor. It's basically saying, look at what I can do now, I've grown up. It's a big reason why I love it so much. Super Metroid will always be one of my favorite games of all time. While it may not have aged as gracefully as gaggles of fanboys would like to admit, it still holds up pretty well. There's a reason its formula has been aped countless times over. Metroid Fusion was the first Metroid game to be released after Super Metroid, 8 years afterwards to be exact, and boy, did it have some mighty gargantuan shoes to fill. In Fusion, Samus is overtaken by and then fused with the next parasite, an amorphous blob which mimics its prey by fusion. Creatures' cosmetic appearances, as well as their intelligence and memories, are harnessed by the parasites in order to reign supreme over their source of sustenance. The X-Parasites invade a neighboring space station, and who else but Samus can save the day, right? All of the basic Metroid tropes that had been previously established are in full force here. Fusion builds upon the foundation that Super Metroid had erected, and just runs with it. All of the hunting and seeking is in full swing, with even more secret paths and narrow tunnels to eke through than ever before. Brand new, never-before-seen enemies infest the BSL space station, along with unfamiliar environments and weapons to dispose of the X. Some of our favorites return as well. Accompanying Samus inside of the space station is a supercomputer which gives directives and missions handed down by the Galactic Federation themselves. The computer releases hatches and authorizes new weapon downloads only when orders from above give authorization to do so. This limits access within the space station. The computer, whom Samus names Adam after a former commander, also gives Samus objectives by marking your destination on the map. This is where lots of die-hard Metroid fans have polarizing opinions. The seemingly restrictive exploration in parts of Fusion is in stark contrast to the sense of desolate isolation that the previous entries had entrenched. While I had mentioned earlier that in Zero Mission reaching point B from point A isn't as easy as it looks on the map, Fusion is where this idea had originated to begin with. Doors are often blocked off, passages are impassable, and oftentimes forces you to think outside of the box to reach your destination. I absolutely love this. It was so cleverly thought out and designed in such a way that I couldn't care less if Adam was telling me where to go. It's still Metroid, there's still tons of areas to explore and goodies to unearth. One of the biggest flaws from Super Metroid and the original was the ability to exploit glitches which allow you to reach areas you normally wouldn't be able to attain, or sequence breaking. Fusion and each subsequent 2D Metroid game that I've played since has put the kibosh on that. People actually count this as one of Fusion's faults. I, on the other hand, am happy Nintendo fixed this issue. The controls are also a lot tighter and not as floaty as in previous entries. The graphics are on point with much more color and fusion settings versus any Metroid game up to that point. Again, contrasting opinions will favor Super Metroid's much darker environment over Fusion's brighter one. I suppose I just really dug the more vibrant aesthetic in this Metroid game. Something different, you know? My biggest gripe, albeit a small one, would have to be the music. While it is good, it's nothing that knocks my socks off, and is the weakest soundtrack of the 3 games listed here in my opinion. But one of the main reasons that I love Fusion so much is the dreaded SA-X. A clone of a full-powered Samus, this X-Parasite is far too powerful for you to take on until much later in the game. Crossing paths with this alien will spell out certain doom for our space-exploring protagonist, so avoiding it is the way to go. You'll be running for your life with the shit rolling down your leg, no joke. The anxiety and excitement upon bumping into the SA-X gives me an adrenaline surge akin to the ones that the Nemesis would always induce in Resident Evil 3. It's rare that a game can leave me feeling that way. It's priceless. So yeah, for me, Fusion just took what made every prior Metroid adventure great and just improved upon it. The limited exploration was done so brilliantly that I can hardly criticize that facet of the game. In fact, I'm absolutely praising it, and I couldn't give two shits about sequence breaking or speedruns, so this game is naturally right up my alley. Fusion gets far too much shit, and undeservedly so, because it's not only a fantastic Metroid game, it's a fantastic game, period. So which 3 Metroid games are your favorites? Let me know in the comments below. Big shout out to my patrons, the mighty Megadan29, the Great White Peter North, my brother in metal Nintendo, Ya Guy, T-Belly, the Guitar Shredding Pixel Crash Gaming, Grumble Grumble, Hungry Gorilla, Slap Happy J-Love81, and the Beard Super Nintendo. Thanks a lot, you guys rock.